Look, man, I am willing to bet that in any hotel that has been around since the beginning of the 20th century, that has happened. There's a higher probability that that has happened than hasn't.
Yes.
A dog man blowing a butler. It happened.
Yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question were the movies we loved and growing up were really that good? You ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? Have you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you? I'm one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roeper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Red Rum Lyons.
Here's Johnny.
And each week we take a look back and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we break out our race car VHS tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes at the end of the podcast. The three of us will provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and now Watchmen. Right now, it's on HBO. It's really good. Check it out. And we're doing a podcast over there at Shat on TV. You can find all the links to download and subscribe over at shatontv.com. That being said, Big D, it's that time of year again where we break out our pumpkins. We do a little bit of carving. I go to adult Halloween costume parties. It's the Shat Spooktacular. And we kicked it off last week with a little Army of Darkness, which you had never seen. You had never seen an Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And we're following up now with what movie tonight?
Well, amazing to say, this is the 3rd annual
That's right.
Spooktacular.
That's
Shat the
Wow.
Movies.
Break out your hay
Amazing.
rides and hedge mazes.
I just, I didn't think we were going to make 5 episodes, and here we are on our 3rd Halloween. So this is a good deal. So this voting category this year, we narrowed it down to only 1980s horror films. So in last place was Halloween 2. In 5th was Creepshow. 4th, Friday the 13th, which we already covered, actually. Then 3rd was Child's Play. Hellraiser came in 2nd. And the winner, with over 52% of the vote, this wasn't even close, of a whopping 3,200 votes total, was 1980 Stanley Kubrick classic, The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining is a 1980 horror film produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick and based on Stephen King's 1977 novel. The film stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, Scatman Crothers, and Danny Lloyd. The central character in The Shining is Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, who is an aspiring writer and recovering alcoholic who accepts a position as the off-season caretaker of the isolated historic Overlook Hotel in the Colorado Rockies. After a winter storm leaves the Torrances snowbound, Jack's sanity deteriorates due to the influence of the supernatural forces that inhabit the hotel, placing his wife, played by Shelley Duvall, and son in danger. The film was released in the United States on May 23rd, 1980 by Warner Brothers. There were several versions for theatrical releases, each being shorter than the prior, with about 27 minutes cut. Reactions to the film at the time of the release were mixed, with Stephen King coming out and criticizing the film due to its deviations from the novel. The assessment became more favorable, however, in following decades and is now widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential of all horror films. It did go on to gross almost $45 million at the box office against a budget of $19 million, and a sequel called Dr. Sleep is set to be released almost a week from the time that we release this podcast on November 8th, 2019. Before we dive into the review, we always ask the question, where were you, or what are your memories the first time you ever watched The Shining? We'll start with you, Big D.
So this came out in 1980. I was 7 at the time. I remember seeing it on HBO when we first got HBO, early 80s. And everybody always said, oh, The Shining's scary. Don't watch it. Don't. So as a kid, I was terrified. But unless you catch like 4 or 5 30-second clips of The Shining, there's really not that much scary. It's mostly people in a hotel, people walking around. So I was always terrified. And I remember going to HBO and like putting it on, and then I would change the channel. And I would put it back on, and I would change the channel. The only thing I remember as a kid was the maze at the end. But I never knew why it was so scary, and it was because I was too scared to sit and watch the entire thing in one setting.
How about you, Gene? Have you, as a kid, did you watch The Shining?
I don't know if I'd call it watching, Raj. I have sat in front of The Shining at least 3 times and tried very hard to understand what the hell was going on. I feel like you watching Heat. It's like, what is happening here? I always end up stumped. It's like when I try to watch Twin Peaks. Everyone's always, oh, Twin Peaks is so good. You got to watch it. I try. And I get it. Like, there's an ambiance. It's undeniably spooky. It's entertaining. I like what's going on the screen. I just literally didn't understand the plot until just this week when I read it while putting together the show notes. I was like, oh, that's what this movie is about? So I think as a child and a young adult, I was just like, what is happening here? I get that it's a haunted hotel and Jack Nicholson's going crazy, but like, what's the point?
Well, I remember watching this movie as a young kid at a sleepover with my buddy John Townsend, whose parents were far more willing to let a fat kid with an overactive imagination and sleep terrors watch this movie. I do remember it's weird because I got the plot, and I think I've talked about this before, but my grandparents' house, the house that I spent a lot of time at as a kid, was also haunted. So I got the plot of this movie even as a young child. But I remember my little...
Hold on. I got to say, are we going there again this week?
We will. We'll get there.
No, please.
We'll get there.
I'm so glad that Raj never went on a tour of duty. Could you imagine Raj if he'd gone to war? Holy shit. Did I ever tell you about the time we went into Baghdad? Oh.
You know, I would be some sort of like bitch logistics guy or working for the Air Force, like in Nevada.
Oh, those are the guys.
You're right. You're right. With that being said, Big D, play the trailer.
Here's Johnny. I'm coming down.
Come and play with us.
School teacher turned writer Jack Torrance takes a caretaker job at the remote Overlook Hotel in the Rocky Mountains. The hotel, built on the site of a Native American burial ground, closes during the snowed-in months. Manager Stuart Ullman tells Jack about the hotel's history and warns him about its reputation, where a previous caretaker supposedly developed cabin fever and killed his family and himself. In Boulder, Jack's son Danny has a terrifying premonition about the hotel, and Jack's wife Wendy tells a doctor about Danny's imaginary friend, Tony.
So, Raj, Big D, we talk often about the opening credits in movies, whether it's Karate Kid's Cross Country Jangle or more effective openings. This movie has a very striking, beautiful, sweeping scenes of the Rockies as the car is, trekking along toward the Overlook Hotel. And the hotel itself is very impressive. I'd argue it's the main character in this movie. If it's not Jack, it's the hotel. And the Overlook took my breath away as a child. I remember seeing it, and it blew my mind as a concept of what a hotel could look like. Because I grew up in Arizona. Hotels are fairly new and pretty small. And this was like, in my mind, what a mountain resort should look like. I always dreamed about going to a place like this. And up until we watched this movie and I did research on it, I thought that the movie was filmed at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, because that's where it's based. The Stanley itself is a 142-room hotel built in the early 20th century. And it was actually built by the inventor of the Yankee steam-powered car, who used it as a tuberculosis sanitarium. So I was like, oh, okay. So I'm doing all this research, and after I get a half hour into it, I realized that the Stanley Hotel only inspired Stephen King to write The Shining after he stayed there. The film is not made there. The exterior shots are actually the Timberline Lodge in Oregon, and the interior shots are actually sets that were constructed in the UK and inspired by the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite National Park. And part of that was because Kubrick was so old, he didn't want to travel back and forth to the United States, so they just did most of the filming abroad.
So I got to ask you, we assume now that Jack, he's in between jobs. He used to be a teacher. He claims now that he's looking to start writing again. He's moved west. We learned some things about his backstory, that maybe he got fired, maybe he had to leave for a reason. So he's going to take any job you give him. But I found myself thinking, could I do 5 months alone in the mountains with my wife and child, or would I go crazy? I think like it sounds like a dream job. Tons of sleep. It's the wilderness. You go out on walks. It looks beautiful. I could do it now if I had the internet, but 1980, that shit might have driven me crazy. Could you guys have done that?
When I was in college, I was an RA, and during the off season, they would have to have RAs that stayed in the residence halls, and all the residents are gone. So it's an empty residence hall. So normally you'd have, maybe 200 residents and you're just by yourself. And I would do that for about a 3-month stretch. I mean, I could still get out and go, I could leave and go visit people and stuff. But for the most part, I was there. I would say I was there probably at least, 12 to 16 hours a day by myself. And I really enjoyed it. But again, I still had the knowledge that I could go elsewhere. And this, again, remember, this is like 1999. So, I mean, there was internet access, but it was, pretty primitive at the time. It wasn't like we have now. I think I could do it. I think that I'm peopled out, man. Like as I get older, I'm really done with human beings. And I think I could go the 5 months.
I wouldn't leave my room in the hotel. That would be the thing. Like that's the only way I could do it. I would just stay in my room. Cause I'm like you, Gene, like there have been like this past week, today was the first day I've ventured outside like in 5 days.
Oh
so
my
I don't have any problem because I work from home. I don't have any problem not leaving the house, but I think in a big setting like that, my overactive imagination would run wild, especially in a setting like that. My mind would start to wander and it would probably play tricks on me.
You'd hear things in a big hotel. Shit just makes noise. If you have like old heating, things creak, things clang, doors close. Jack might have been completely stable, and maybe just this fucking job drove him nuts.
I don't think so. That opening interview he's got with Mr. Ullman, right? I mean, he's crazy as fuck. You look at the guy, I'm like, and he's like, "Oh, you come highly recommended. I can see that everything's going to be fine here." You look over at Jack Nicholson, and he's basically like, he could have been just eating a turd in front of him and be like, "Huh, what?" And this dialogue between the two of them, I think, really sets up the movie really well. And I was surprised because, Kubrick movies are often remembered for their eerie settings or their surreal imagery and the disturbing topics that they cover. And often it has to do with madness. But I noticed with The Shining, there was something additional to that. And it was that the script was really mature. When these two guys are talking to each other, it's a very grown-up script. They're talking about cabin fever and the responsibility of hotel caretaking, the little things you have to do. And it's very much a script for grownups. I think as a kid, you probably don't get the nuance here. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Actually, Kubrick, he's actually got a lot of very mature scripts. So if you look at Clockwork Orange or Full Metal Jacket, like he always comes to the party with very mature writing. And we focus so much on the visuals because he is a master of that. I mean, getting that shot just right. But all these movies have very dense scripts.
But I think that's the beauty of Kubrick's films is that he wants you to be challenged. He wants you to see the art, the maturity of his scripts and what he puts on film. And he's kind of a mad genius and did a lot of things that today would be unacceptable. But at the time, it was like, you don't question the genius that is. But the one thing I do have to question is Shelley Duvall's casting, because we just did the Money Pit where we were like, oh, look, it's Shelley Long. But Shelley Duvall, outside of the scariness of the hotel, the scariest part of this movie is Shelley Duvall, right? She looks like she looks like a wet dog left outside for like 15 days straight without any kind of food.
Okay, I don't want to laugh because she's a battered spouse. So I don't want to make light of it. But Roger, you are 100% correct. I'm so sad that I thought Shelley Long was Shelley Duvall. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference. And if you think she looked rough here, Google her now. Woo-wee.
She looks like the old lady in the tub.
Yeah, I feel bad for her. She looks like she's missing a chromosome or two.
That's terrible. I think the one character that's missing a chromosome is that fucking kid and his finger friend Tony. Maybe if Shelley Duvall's character didn't smoke cigarettes at the breakfast table, he wouldn't be so strange. Like, Big D, you're the only one with the child, so you're the only one that I can direct this question to. Like, if you and your beautiful wife Vanessa were at the breakfast table, Emma walks in her pajamas, holding her what was the chicken's name in Moana?
Hey.
if Emma walks in holding hey and goes and she starts to cut her waffles and then turns and she doesn't talk to hey, which would be totally acceptable, but she starts like doing her thing with her finger in a different voice, like, hello, Mr. Ebert. Emma's not here right now. I would like some more syrup, please. Like, is Tony a demon? Like, what is happening what's going on there?
Well, first off, I want to address your assertion that cigarette smoking will cause this kind of brain damage or kind of or it's going to at least cause the deep raspy voice in the child. That probably would. But listen, back in the 80s, I mean, I was born in 73. Smokers, they were everywhere. I remember flying on a plane to Sweden, and there would be a smoking section, and a row behind the smoking section was the non-smoking section. So it didn't make a fucking difference. You were in a giant tube filled with cigarette smoke.
When I was a kid, we had an ashtray in every room of the house, and we used the ashtray in the car. When I turned 14, I just started smoking my mom's cigarettes, and nobody batted an eye. It was totally normal.
What's interesting, and my father smoked as well, but I think that's why I don't smoke today. But what's interesting is like today with the whole vaping situation, the whole reason we went to vape is because it didn't bother other people as much, right? I mean, outside of just looking, like people just look at people who vape as like kind of douchey, but like there's no like after smell. It's not crazy. You can't really do it indoors, but it's now causing like popcorn lung, or people are buying it off of like black market sites. And I think that's what's happening. But like, if I would much rather you vape than smoke in my area.
Vaping or smoking is the same as me busting ass. If I can fart whenever I want and just emit a smell that you can't control, that's what vaping is. You're blowing it. You're doing all kinds of tricks. I should be able to fart then and own it. And you should just shut up.
Do your farts smell? Do your farts smell?
Oh, they're awful. But so does the vape or the cigarette.
A vape doesn't smell. It's water.
Think about how long gas takes to get out of Big D's body. It's like a year-long trip. He's a very tall man. So by the time it gets out, there is all sorts of decay. Yep. You're smelling the secrets of the ancients at that point.
You are. You are. But somehow we got away from your original question, Roger. I'm going to try to go back to it.
Yeah, Emma. If Emma's talking and hello, Mr. Ebert.
Okay. So I had written the same question down. I didn't know how fairly common it is, because I worry about it, especially after this movie. Emma, the other day, I heard her talking to herself, and I'm like, oh, fuck, is this really happening? So I walk in, and she's got Peppa Pig and Shelley Sheep, and I think it's Rebecca Rabbit, these three little Peppa Pig characters. And they're talking to each other. I was like, whoa. I said, whew, thank goodness that it wasn't her talk. I would lose my shit. Apparently, it's normal. I mean, I did some research, and Marjorie Taylor at the University of Oregon, she said by the age 7 that 37% of kids have imaginary friends. I don't know if it's normal. They said the only time you should worry is if the invisible friend is mean or it causes them to try to hurt somebody. But still, I think it's a problem. If your kid is playing with an imaginary friend and not talking to real people, I think it's a sign that there's something going on.
I did a little research, and no Marjorie Taylor exists at the University of Oregon, Big D. Is this something you want to tell us? No, but I never had an imaginary friend growing up. I wouldn't condemn it. I don't think it's that weird, but it's definitely creepy.
Yeah.
Is it strange that I wanted an imaginary friend, but no one would come to me? Like I kept hoping that at one point an imaginary friend would show up and I would have someone. But I was alone. I had to watch other people with their imaginary friends and just sit on the sidelines.
That's the most Roger Roeper thing you've ever said.
Can you imagine how fucking terrifying it would be if you got one now? Like you just wake up one day and you look across the room, you're like, oh shit, you're here.
I've been waiting for you, Roger.
Hello, Roger. Can we dress up and go to Comic-Con together? Yes. Listen, definitely if I'm the father of the child, I'm not going to spend 5 months alone with this kid. Definitely not going to do that. I don't know. So Emma, you're saying doesn't do or exhibit any of the signs that Tony is doing. Thank goodness.
No.
All right. Well, I'm more than happy to babysit her if you need a babysitter, because if that kid started talking, that'd be crazy.
I need to see some of your credentials first.
some background.
Yeah.
Well, when the family moves into the hotel on closing day, head chef Dick Halloran surprises Danny by telepathically offering him ice cream. Halloran explains to Danny that he and his grandmother share this telepathic ability, which he calls the shining. Halloran tells Danny that the hotel has a shine to it, along with many memories, not all of which are good, and he tells Danny to stay away from room 237.
So Scatman Crothers, he was widely praised after doing this movie, and he plays my second favorite Dick. He's just a great example of how perfectly cast The Shining is. I think Jack Nicholson is the most obvious example, but Scatman Crothers is one of my favorite 80s horror movie characters. He's so comforting and he's so like heavenly. Like I just kind of imagine he's like what an angel would look like on screen. And although he was 70 at the time of the filming and he was like basically near death, like Kubrick was unrelenting in pushing this guy. And reports say that he was actually reduced to tears by the demanding filming style of Kubrick, who required 60 takes to get that close-up shot. So the one where he's in bed in the hotel room in Florida and that camera's just panning in on his terrified face. They did that 60 fucking times.
Yeah, but think of how he got to use that time to look at those awesome naked, black empowering photos that were above his bed in television.
Yeah, I wouldn't know they were naked because I watched the AMC version. So they were just blurred out pictures.
You are missing out. They had the big, huge afros and like they were very artistically done. Yeah. And I was like, man, fucking Dick's got it. Like Dick's like a swinging bachelor down in Miami with those photos up. I was like, yeah. So is that his real name or was he like a jazz? Was he like a jazz?
Yeah. So Scatman Crothers. That's not his. I mean, he changed his name to Scatman as like a marketing tool, but basically,
right.
But yeah, he was a musician and he sang scat, and so Scatman Crothers.
Thank God he changed his name back then when jazz was popular, and not today, when Scatman is either someone who listens to our podcast or does other things with fecal matter.
So, Gene, I agree with you. I think the cast is perfect. The kid who plays Danny is an actor, Danny Lloyd. And he only did this, and I think he retired shortly after. And I'm watching this movie. I'm like, fuck, why can't kids act like this today? This kid is so creepy. He's so convincing. I'm like, this kid is great. Only to realize later, the kid didn't know what he was acting in. Kubrick told the kid the whole time, this is a movie about a family who lives in a hotel. So Danny is acting creepy just by himself. What kind of family does he have that he believes this is what families are doing? Kubrick wanted him to have no exposure to any blood, any of the violence. The scene where Wendy is like carrying him after he's been assaulted by the woman in the tub and he's got the bruises, that was like a Chucky doll. So this kid just thought he was in a regular family movie, and only later when he grew up did he realize what it was about. So he's not a good actor. It's just creepy music and, a dark tone. It wasn't the kid's acting.
I mean, he did have to spend a year around Jack Nicholson and then having Scatman Crothers be like, hey, you want some ice cream? You got a shine to you. He might have just been creeped out by people.
I was amazed by like how innocent we were in the 1980s where you could just, I've just met this adult. And it's perfectly fine that I leave you alone in the kitchen and go off and explore the rest of the hotel while you give me ice cream. Like, would you ever leave Emma with any stranger that you just met? Big D? There was like an inherent...
Fuck no.
Yeah, no. Like, you would never leave a kid. But that was the 80s.
No, if somebody was like, hey, Emma, you like chocolate? Come with me. Let's go have some chocolate.
First of all, he doesn't say you like chocolate.
He does. He says, you like ice cream?
Yeah.
Do you like ice cream? What kind do you like? Chocolate.
He's eating vanilla ice cream.
He says chocolate.
Oh, does he say chocolate?
Yeah, not to mention the giant rack of knives and the walk-in freezer right next to them.
Well, do you guys believe what we'll talk the Shining? That's what they call like the telepathic abilities, the psychic abilities. Do you guys believe that people have these? Do you believe in telepathic abilities, or have you ever known anyone with it, or even gone to a psychic?
If you go anywhere near the story of your grandmother, I'm fucking turning this podcast off.
Which grandmother?
Isn't it, who's the grandmother who was like
The
her
psychic
voices, the psychic one, the one who you believed had powers?
She wasn't psychic. No one was ever psychic. My family is obsessed with psychics and telepathy and being able to see the future and have sensitivity, because my grandparents' house was haunted and my grandmother was held down by a vengeful spirit. They heard knockings. My aunt saw, as a child, she saw dancers, old like Confederate mid 19th century Southern style dancing, multiple ones in the foyer. And so like as a kid, like this was something that I grew up with, and I definitely felt the spirits. I felt that the house was evil. Like there was something in the house there was a dark energy in that. But my friend, growing up, Tim, Sturgeon, I guess I could say. I mean, he probably doesn't listen to this. Tim had psychic abilities. He had the shine to him. He would hear voices. So anytime like Tim and I, we would go like on trips together, family trips, he always had a pillow that he laid over his ears so that it was a way for him to drown out the voices. Now, the voices weren't telling him to do anything evil, like burn down the house or chop up the family or anything like that. They would just come to him and he would say to them, like, go away. I don't want to talk to you right now. Go away. I don't want to talk to you right now. So yeah, no, it's, I believe that there are people that have this sensitivity. I also believe that there's far more people that con and take advantage of this, because Tim didn't advertise it. He didn't try to make money off of it. He didn't want this power. And I think that was, I think that does exist.
I think it's more likely a brain tumor.
How could it be a brain tumor? My aunt does have a brain tumor. My grandmother didn't have a brain tumor.
You don't know yet. Still early.
That's ridiculous. If you had experienced anything, I would not say, oh, it's a medical condition that you have.
Yeah. Arthur Fleck also believes that Thomas Wayne is his father, just because his mother told him. That doesn't make it so.
Well, the other thing that's scary about this is room 237, which it was changed for the film version.
That's right. In Stephen King's book, the spooky events are set in room 217, not room 237 as we see in the film. And what happened was Timberline Lodge, the lodge that they shot for the exterior shots, their management asked the production staff to change the room number so that guests wouldn't avoid room 217. So they're like, pick a room number that doesn't exist, so we won't have to worry about that room being empty because people won't stay in it. So there's no room 237 at the hotel. But what's interesting about it is that according to the Timberline Lodge website, now room 217 is the most requested room at the Timberline, which is like a no-brainer. But I think, again, it just speaks to how different times are now, where people are like, oh, the haunted room? Yeah, I want to stay in that one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't quite understand the concept of room 237. So is 237 kind of that portal that unleashes the evil, or why can't Tony go into room 237?
Because there's a fucking lady in there that's going to kill a child or try to. It's dangerous. He's trying to protect Danny.
No, but my whole thing, I could never figure out, what happened in there that was so bad. Even later on we see, I'm still not clear on really what went down. Did she drown herself? Was she murdered? Did she shoot? Does anybody know?
No, what happened in the real 217 of the Stanley Hotel is, one, Stephen King stayed there. So that's probably one reason it made it into his book. But the story goes that back when the Stanley Hotel was lit by gaslight, there was a storm and they had an outage. And so a chambermaid was sent in to investigate this room, and she had a lit candle, and didn't go so well for her. So that's the story of 217.
Wow.
Really? Because what I found was 217 in the Overlook Hotel. This is the room that was inhabited in the past by Lorraine Massey. It was an older woman who would usually seduce the young bellboys, and that was her room. So they don't say what it was that killed her, but she would go in there.
In the book.
In the book.
In the book. Oh, in the book. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why Jack is coming in. She's seducing him. I don't know if she tried to seduce young Danny, and that just didn't go too well. So I don't know what happened to her. Maybe eventually she just died there, but.
Oh, okay. But like the real 217 of the Stanley Hotel, there was a real incident.
Yeah, there was an explosion in that one. So you have So Stephen King, being the creative mastermind that he is, he's like, somebody died
in a cocaine-fueled evening. He's like, oh, let's make it a woman who seduces all the young bellboys.
Well, yeah, because he's always got to make it a moral tale. That's like his thing, right? He gets off on morality. He's like, oh, this woman was evil. She liked to fuck.
Gross.
Well, another thing I got off on in the movie was the music and the direction. Both are phenomenal. In fact, when the movie opens up, you talk about like that scene where you see the VW bug kind of moving through the mountains of the Rockies into the Overlook, but there's also like this heavy use of synthesizer that Kubrick uses, where it's like bon bon bon. It's almost like a little Inception, like
very much.
But then he uses silence as another way to give the hotel like the emptiness, that ominous feeling. And I really feel like that does a phenomenal job combined with his artistic vision. Every shot is just beautiful, where it adds that layer of creepiness. And that's the one thing that I just really makes me love this film so much, is that it's not a bunch of jump scares. It's not, the here's Johnny with the pickaxe. It's not the blood coming out of the elevator that makes this movie so fantastic, especially around Halloween, but it's the overall creepiness and the musical score.
I totally agree with you. So I watched this with my brother-in-law, who's never seen it. So as the movie's going on, he's like, this is not what I thought it was. I thought it was about Jack going insane and the axe. So he thought it was he didn't know it was that whole supernatural and that Danny was the big part of it. But Roger, you're 100% on. Without that music, without the score, this isn't frightening. I would guarantee if you stripped all the music out, you'd be like, this movie sucks. This is just boring. But Kubrick, he likes to use classical music and the synthesizers, like you said. And it just overwhelms you. It almost just pulls on your emotions. And it's so, like, he's just driving to the hallway, like you said. Or there's a scene later on at the end where Wendy goes out to check on the snowcat. Mm-hmm. There's no ambient sound. There's no sound of the storm. There's no sound of her walking in the snow. There's nothing but that music. And it's just driving. And it made it terrifying. But if you take that music out, you got a kid riding his bicycle in the hotel. You got a guy on a typewriter. It is not the same. You put those two together and it's fucking history.
Well, it's not just the music, it's the way he uses the sound, because when there isn't music, like when Danny's on the tricycle or the big wheel and he's going from hardwood to carpet, it's perfectly matched, and the sound editing really makes that. Or when Jack is furiously on the typewriter in that big empty room, it's just the click clacking of the typewriter, right? So it's one of the greatest things of watching this movie, and really makes it kind of creepy.
Or Jack bouncing the ball off the wall as he's slowly going insane. You're hearing the sound echo.
He's got a good arm, Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
While Jack's writing goes nowhere, Danny and Wendy explore the hotel's hedge maze, and Halloran goes to Florida. Wendy learns that the phone lines are out due to the heavy snowfall, and Jack becomes prone to violent outbursts. Danny's curiosity about Tomb 37 gets the best of him, and when he sees the room door open, he goes inside later. Wendy finds Jack screaming during a nightmare while asleep at his typewriter, and after she awakens him, Jack says that he dreamed that he killed her and Danny. Danny arrives visibly traumatized and bruised. Wendy accuses Jack of abusing Danny, which Jack denies.
So, Raj, you and Big D have been very generous with the praise of Stanley Kubrick in the making of this movie. I've got to say that of all the shots of this movie, and there are many beautiful ones, the most perfect shot, just pure genius, is when Danny enters the main hall after he's been assaulted. We see from Danny's point of view, and he's just this little tiny guy, and you see this big hall, and way on the other end, you see Jack. He's kind of slumped over the typewriter now. He's been brought back up by Wendy, and Danny's back to the camera. He shambles into this room, and the distance between Danny and Wendy makes it clear that she's so far away and so preoccupied with this abusive man that she doesn't see the trauma on her own child. And what's great about it is one of those few moments where I realize I'm like, she can't tell he's hurt because she's so far away. And I know that because I can't tell the look on her face or what's going on over there. It's just wonderfully done. And as she walks closer to Danny, you can make out more of her features, and you realize that she's simultaneously able to make out more of Danny's features until the moment where she realizes he's been attacked. It's really impressive filmmaking. You just don't see this kind of quality anymore. We talk about Michael Bay, movies where it's shot, close up, close up, close up. This is just genius.
Well, it's the thing. Today, everything is jump scare, blood, and gore. Mm-hmm. So for a horror movie to be truly effective, I don't think you need jump scares. My brother-in-law, he had never seen it. Halfway through, he's like, no, don't go down the hall. Don't open that door. Don't do. That's awesome. That is when it's an effective movie. A good horror movie doesn't simply have to show you somebody's guts spilled out, make me feel uneasy, make me question what's going on. Danny driving down those hallways as it's echoing, even the first time, you didn't know what was coming, but you were like, shit, you should not be there alone. That's much scarier than Jigsaw or Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger. Is just a kid alone and something bad's going to happen.
But I mean, this is what makes Kubrick such a mad genius. He was crazy. Now, originally, this was scheduled to be a 17-week shoot. The production went on for 14 months. That's around 200 filming days. According to the film studio, Kubrick shot 1.3 million feet of film. And he used, on top of that, psychological techniques to obtain the performances that he wanted from the cast. So you talked about, bringing Scatman to tears. He was also really hard on Shelley Duvall, who he berated and criticized during the filming, which some say led to her most memorable performances. But today, you couldn't do that. Number one, I don't think a studio would let it go on for that long. But also, I think there's rules in place to prevent this from happening now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Shelley Duvall's character, Wendy, was really, she was really brought down to this beaten down, very mousy sort of character, which is not what King wrote at all. So this is also Kubrick's vision of a story that he wanted to tell that involved a lot more of that breaking down of human beings that wasn't really present in King's novel. And so it's not just Kubrick using psychological techniques to get the performances out of characters, but also molding these characters into something he wanted to see on screen.
I didn't realize how much of the abusive part of the relationship existed as part of this movie. I didn't remember that at all. It's almost like toxic.
Yeah, the misogyny is the scariest part to me. We see a lot of blood and death in The Shining, but that toxic misogyny that's unleashed when Jack begins losing his mind, when those layers get peeled back, that's the disturbing part. You can tell that Jack at his core is an abusive loser. He's a failure and he's taking it out on her to make himself feel better and powerful.
100%.
And the scenes between Jack and Wendy, they're intentionally hard to watch. He's so mean and so insulting, and he preys on her meekness. The more he sees her shrinking, the better he feels. And it's that's the scariest part of the movie to me.
God, but it's just not misogyny. Think about this. If a doctor went to a home and the mother's like, oh, it was nothing, Jack was having a couple drinks. It could have happened 100 times. Just yanked him by the arm. Today they've been on the phone with the police. So he's not just doing that to his wife. He's doing it to Danny. And the teacher's like, oh, that's just a normal thing to do. It's not normal. And it is frightening. It is sad. She is broken. She's beaten. But there's some warning signs here. I understand you can't break out of these toxic relationships. It's really hard to do. But when you stop shaving, when you start keeping strange hours, when your partner chooses to wear a bathrobe or sweatpants in the middle of the day, it's time for Wendy and Danny to leave. And this is curiously, like Roger said earlier in the podcast, that he hasn't left his house this week. This is his outfit. Roger Roeper wears sweatpants. He now has a 12 o'clock shadow. It's not a beard, but it looks kind of derelict, like a little homeless look. But when your spouse stops bathing, wearing sweatpants, and just sleeping in the day, run away, because that's Roger Roeper.
This reminds me of when the King Bee got in a bar fight and he got his jaw broken on both sides and his eye socket broken. And so they wired his jaw shut for 8 weeks. And he messages me on week 6. And he's like, man, there's this chick in my bed and I just really want her to leave. And I'm sitting there going, whoa. I've been over to your house. I've been feeding you milkshakes through a syringe around the backside of your molars. I know that you can't brush your teeth. The only way we clean out your mouth is by pushing a water mixture into it and then letting it drain out of the front of your face. You haven't shaved. You're living in a bathrobe. And someone came over and fucked you in your dirty ass house. and you want her to leave? That woman is a saint. She should be winning an award. We should be beatifying her. What the hell is wrong with you?
Okay, but Roger, are you wearing sweatpants?
No, I'm wearing gym shorts right now. They're my going out shorts.
When's
they're
the last time you
shorts
shaved?
and my going out shorts.
Roger, when's the last time you shaved?
I was growing a beard. The problem is the sides of my beard are white, so you can't see them on the camera because of the light, the shine that's coming in. So all of this is filled in. It's just really, really light.
Okay. How many hours have you spent out of the house in the last week?
I don't know. Today we left around 10:30. we shopped. This is no joke. I wish I was making this up. We shopped at all the Goodwills and the Salvation Armies and then came home. So I really am living like a Jack character right now. I'm not drinking though. I'm on the wagon, so that's good.
Jack wasn't drinking either.
All work and no play. Well, the question I have is not just about his misogyny, but does Jack have the shine too? Because Dick O'Halloran, he says, my grandmother also had it, so it could be hereditary. Jack is the one that starts seeing things. He gets premonitions, very similar to Danny, where Tony is the one in his dream that comes to him and shows him all the images that's going to happen. The same thing happens with Jack, and he's going into these ballrooms and he's seeing all these figures. Does he have maybe a little bit of that as well? And he's just afraid because he's an adult and he thinks, well, I probably just have a brain tumor.
I think Jack does have the shine because we learned that it's hereditary. So we hear that Dick say that his grandmother had it. And I think in order to see these things, you have to have the shine. Certainly Wendy sees stuff later, but I think it's at the point where it's kind of a crescendo of a psychic flood. But I do think that Jack, I mean, he's communicating with the spirits and the memories of this place. I think it's key to his madness, and I do believe that he has the shine. It makes sense.
I disagree. I don't think the backbone of the movie is we don't know what is real. The only times I think that we can really be sure about what's going on is whether it's Dick or the doctor. At any other point, you could be seeing it from Jack's perspective. You could be seeing it from Danny's perspective. You don't know what is real. You don't know what is madness. You don't know what is actually going on other than maybe Dick and the doctor.
Yeah, okay, so if you believe Dick's character,
yes,
I'm just going to go along with you here, then you believe that Dick has the shine. You believe that the shining does exist.
Oh, in this world, yes.
Okay, so what we're saying is based on the evidence that it's hereditary and possibly Jack, maybe he's crazy because he doesn't know how to handle this power.
You want to know how I can tell you that that's not true?
Okay.
Is Dick could immediately tell that Danny had the shine. They can almost identify each other. You know, it's
okay, well, that's fair.
And Jack, his whole life, never noticed that Danny had this power until he was told by the spirit. So I think he's just crazy. He's in the hotel, and Danny's got the power, and so does Dick. He would have spotted it by then.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, Jack does meet a ghostly bartender named Lloyd, to whom he complains about his marriage. Wendy tells Jack that Danny told her a crazy woman in 237 attempted to strangle him. Jack investigates room 237 and encounters a dead woman's ghost, but he tells Wendy that he saw nothing. See, that's the reason why I think maybe he's keeping the shine away from people. Anyway, Jack attends a ghost ball and meets the ghost of Grady, the previous caretaker, who tells Jack that he must correct his wife and child, and that Danny has reached out to Halloran using his talent. Halloran grows concerned about what is going on at the hotel and flies back to Colorado. Danny calls out, "Red rum, red rum, red rum," and goes into another trance, referring to himself only as Tony.
So Lloyd, the bartender, I had forgotten about this guy, and man, he's the shit. So I miss the era of the old man bartender. Like, I don't know if it's just because I live in Arizona, but I rarely encounter like professional, mature old man bartenders like Lloyd. Like, I like a bartender that makes a neat drink, keeps the conversation polite, earns the tip. nowadays you either get the bartender who's coasting on that young sex appeal, like she just looks good, she's wearing shorts or whatever, or there's just that train wreck at Chili's that's just fucking like, just fucking wearing a vest that's a little bit too tight, spiky hair, what I'm talking about.
I like how you have your two extremes. It's like you're going to Old Town Scottsdale or you're going to Chili's in Chandler. Like you don't go to any other place. Like I feel like of all the places we live in the West where there are still things like that. If you go to Colorado, you go to like Union Station, they have those bartenders up making craft cocktails. In Salt Lake City, I'm surprised you didn't. Well, Salt Lake City, they just got liquor. So
no, it's a known fact. Look, I've dated bartenders. It's a known fact that all of the old man bartenders are getting replaced by young, attractive women. They know that. And they're often not, I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but often they're not as good a bartender as like somebody like a Lloyd, some guy who just wants to be polite to you and hear about your troubles.
If you go to the Stanley Hotel, there's a beautiful craft whiskey bar there with super classy bartenders. So I highly recommend it if you're north of Denver. But holy shit, that tub scene, guys. Let me see here. So your wife tells you that there's a crazy woman in the tub who attacked your son, and the first thing you do with her is make out with her. Like say that you were Jack. Are you going to make out with that woman?
Say you're married to Shelley Long. I'm sorry. Say you're married to Shelley Duvall, and you're stuck in a hotel for 5 months with your crazy child, and then there's a very tall, slender, full-bosomed woman getting out of a bathtub. I mean, what are you going to do?
I said to myself, that's Gene's type right there. Tall, blonde, lanky, wants to make out right away.
You could tell that she was a dancer. In just that one step, the way she gets out of it, she had some skill. But yeah, and also besides Shelley Duvall being kind of homely, she is a rube. Everywhere she goes, she's like, oh my gosh, look at those tapestries. They're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oh, are those Native American?
See, I had a different take on that. I saw that as a woman who had been abused, trying to be maximum support for her man.
I agree.
Like, oh, you brought me to this amazing place. Thank you so much. And I've seen that. I've seen women who will boost the guy's ego so that he doesn't feel like a failure when the guy fucks up at everything in life.
You're 100% correct. I missed out. Now it makes sense. You're right. She is abused and she's taken a lot. But when Jack says, hey, I had a dream about killing you and Danny, it's time to go. He says, I cut you into little pieces. You know what? She took a punch. She let Danny's arm get pulled out of its socket. But when he says, I'm going to cut you up into pieces, don't tell him, hey, we're leaving. You just go. Go. How do you not go? Just leave.
Well, I think that's the problem that people have struggled with The Shining, or it's become so popular, is not because of all the things that we talked about in terms of the direction and all and the acting and the performances, but it's what is the meaning? What's the real reason? Usually horror films have some sort of meaning. What's the meaning of The Shining?
Yeah, I've viewed this movie multiple times over 20 years, and I still don't fucking know. Like, Kubrick does this thing where he's just ambiguous, and sometimes it's not as apparent. So like Full Metal Jacket, I think was a fairly straightforward movie. Clockwork Orange, it's dancing on that line. I think smarter people than me love this aspect to Kubrick's work, but I get frustrated when I can't stick the facts together. And I'm so confused by this Grady thing. So Grady is a ghost of a 1920s butler, but we also learn that Grady is the guy who killed his family in 1970. So Jack is asking Grady, the ghost, if he's the caretaker who killed his own family. And then Grady says, no, you're the caretaker and you've always been. So then I'm like, oh, okay. So Grady, the ghost, must be Grady, the killer's ancestor. But then why does Grady the ghost start taking responsibility for killing his own family? It's all fucked up.
I think you're going too deep into this. He's a fucking crazy man. He's a crazy guy talking to a bartender that doesn't exist. He's working all these things out in his head. Whatever is possessing the hotel, it obviously has the power to open doors, open up meat lockers, move things around. But let it go. You can't overthink it.
While searching for Jack, Wendy discovers that her now deranged husband has been typing pages filled with the phrase, "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." She begs Jack to leave the hotel with Danny, but he threatens her. Wendy knocks him unconscious with a baseball bat and locks him in the kitchen pantry, but she and Danny are both trapped as Jack has disabled the hotel's two-way radio and Snowcat. Jack converses through the pantry door with Grady, who frees him. Danny continues chanting and drawing the word "Red Rum, Red Rum." When Wendy sees the word reversed in the bedroom mirror, the word is revealed to be murder.
So, Gene, I need some help here, and I think our listeners might need some help. You've helped us, in all kinds of scenarios defend ourselves. So Wendy now realizes that Jack's insane. He's coming at her, and he says, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to bash your brains in. She tries to defend herself by choking up on that wood bat. It's a weak attempt at best. What do you think a person in this situation could have done better to protect themselves?
Well, first of all, let's not diminish the quality work that Wendy did. I mean, she did brain the guy and put him in a freezer. So good job. The fact that she could drag his ass throughout that hotel, I was kind of impressed.
That's that Vermont strength.
Yeah. But first of all, again, in a self-defense situation, guys, I've mentioned this before on the podcast. You've got a bat in your hands. You poke with it. You don't swing it like a bat. You poke with it. A bat being swung is easy to avoid, as Jack Nicholson demonstrates. But a poking motion is much harder to get away from a person. In addition, he's walking upstairs. So your best bet is to actually, what does happen to him is he falls down the stairs, right? Fucks up his leg. But I think she did a good job. But normally, the best thing you could do is run. And I think we discover that later in the movie, that running is the most effective way to counter Jack. So I think, she had a good strategy here, which was weaken him first, mess up his leg. If his leg wasn't messed up, he would have been fine, right? That was what undid him, is he couldn't move very fast. So bonk him on the head, toss him down the stairs. She wasn't expecting a ghost or the shine to unlock the freezer for him.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing as Shelley Duvall was choking up on the bat. I was like, there's no way she's going to get any kind of power on this. And then I was thinking to myself, like, did they do this in one take and this is the best they could get?
Dude, no. You talked about how long it took, the 14 months of filming. That scene, which is a great scene, where Jack Nicholson's so great at it with the ha, and he's like doing the hands and like he's really going bonkers here. That scene where he's following her up the stairs in the main hall took a record 127 takes. He is so menacing, so crazed, and so unhinged that I actually cheered when she brained him and sent him tumbling down the stairs. I was like, fuck yeah, Wendy.
Yeah, but in that scene, Jack Nicholson reminded me of Jim Carrey. There's a physicality to the way he's moving. His face is contorting. He's doing a lot of things that Jim Carrey does later on with comedy. He actually looks demented. He looks like he's possessed. There's something that's going on with his features. It is a brilliant piece of acting. And Kubrick, like you said, he made them do record amounts of takes over and over and over again. Shelley Duvall in an interview said it was the worst experience of her life. And they felt like they were trapped in this hotel with a madman. But it wasn't Jack, it was Kubrick. So I think it is a master class. And maybe it was found organically, or maybe it was just because they were just done with it. They were mentally drained.
Well, Kubrick is on record, or Jack Nicholson is on record by saying Kubrick would make him do multiple takes. Every scene, he did multiple takes. And Kubrick said Jack nailed it every take, like the first time. So could you imagine being Jack Nicholson, getting it right, and then having Kubrick say, we're going to do this 60 more times?
Yeah, the part I love the most about this is at 127 takes, maybe he used like take 2. Like he was exactly. The other ones are going to work. But also that might explain why Shelley Duvall is sucking shit at swinging the bat. Is maybe she's on take like 126. Her arms are just
she's smoked,
fucking done at this
just
point.
Smoked.
Yeah. Well, Jack hacks through the quarter's main door with an axe. He retreats after Wendy slashes his hand with a knife. Hearing Halloran arriving in a snowcat, Jack ambushes and murders him in the lobby, then pursues Danny into the hedge maze. Wendy runs through the hotel looking for Danny, encounters mini ghosts, a cascade of blood that Danny envisioned in Boulder coming out of the elevator, and Halloran's dead corpse. He escapes from the maze, Danny does, and reunites with Wendy. They leave in Halloran's snowcat while Jack freezes to death after losing Danny's trail, because Danny is kind of like walking backwards, kind of a smart kid doing that, back into his thing, and then hides. In a photograph, however, we see in the hallway, Jack is pictured standing amidst a crowd of party revelers from 1921 end movie?
So I spent the entire movie hating Jack for being so cruel to Wendy, for being so self-absorbed, for being an asshole in general. But you give the guy an axe and suddenly I'm on Team Jack. Like, he's just so fucking bananas with the door chopping and the almost comedic bloodlust. And of course you've got that "here's Johnny" line when he sticks his head through the door, which I found out is the most quoted line from this movie. Also completely improvised by Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
What I love about Jack, did you notice when he was caught in the pantry and the ghost comes and talks to him? He's been having like snacks. He's got crackers out. He's got so even though Jack is fucking crazy, he's like, "Oh, snack time. What are we gonna eat here?" But I blame the end of this movie on fucking Dick Halloran. It is his fault. You're having a premonition. You know the boy has the shine. You're concerned enough to fly from Miami to Denver. You're going to drive in a blizzard with overturned tractor trailers. You're going to rent a snow cap. You're going to drive all the way 25 miles up to the hotel. You don't bring a gun? He's from Miami. No. What did he think was going to happen in the hotel? Did he think everything was okay? Then why did he go? And he walks in the hotel like, "Hello? Hello? Hello? Anybody going crazy in here? Hello?"
Can you think of how many takes Kubrick made him do that too? Like this old man is dying, well, I think in the book, that's another thing that's different between the novel and the movie is that Halloran actually is more competent and actually is part of the reason that they're rescued. He actually survives and travels back with Wendy and Danny. So I don't know, that doesn't concern me as much as that weird scene. Yes. And I don't know if it was just done but like as Wendy's kind of searching for Danny and kind of also simultaneously running away from Jack, she stops, and I don't know if it's room 237 or just another room in the hotel, but there's a man in a dog suit.
Oh, I thought it was a bear. That was a bear.
No, it's a dog suit.
I thought it was a bunny.
Nope.
We're all seeing different things.
It's a dog. It's a dog. It's referenced as a dog in the book as well. That's where the dog man. Apparently, the dog man has a bigger part in the novel. I haven't read it, but anyway,
this is going somewhere else.
No. But that's so that man is a furry. That is an early furry. I don't know if they had furries in the 80s, but he apparently seems to be going down on Grady.
Yeah,
like, is that what's happening? He's giving Grady a blowjob.
I thought he was just blowing some rando. I didn't think that was Grady.
No, that's definitely Grady.
Look, man, I am willing to bet that in any hotel that has been around since the beginning of the 20th century, that has happened. Like, there's a higher probability that has happened than hasn't.
Yes.
A dog man blowing a butler. It happened.
Okay, here. Let me challenge you on this. Are you saying that in the 1920s, like, it's not like it is today where I can go on Amazon and I can search dog onesie men's costume and there'll be 50 options. Trust me, I know because I searched. Second, so in the 1920s, you had to get something like that custom made. Where do you go to get a custom dog suit?
Google this. Google 1940s children's costumes.
Okay.
Every costume pre 1970 was terrifying.
That's right.
This is what they did in the 1920s. During the roaring fucking 20s. You want to know what kind of crazy ass costume parties they had? It would make Eyes Wide Shut look like kindercare, man. It's fucking dirty shit.
But the best is whether it's a bear, a rabbit, a dog, they were not concerned at all that Wendy was watching. They kind of liked it. They weren't menacing ghosts.
Yeah, they don't chase her.
No,
they're like, "Hey, do you want to come? You want to get in on this?
Do you like what you see?
Next?
Come on in here."
But the other thing that I didn't notice until I started doing a podcast about 80s and 90s movies was just how different scenes reappear in other. And I know people do this all the time, or directors do this all the time, but Spielberg definitely lifted that kitchen scene from The Shining, right? In Jurassic Park, where Danny goes into the door and kind of hides. That's definitely where he drew inspiration from in Jurassic Park.
You're making faces, Gene. I thought the exact same thing. I was expecting Danny to have trouble closing the door, and then he would look and fucking Jack would see his reflection in the other metal surfaces. I thought it looked exactly the same.
Yeah, every time somebody hides in a movie, it must be from The Shining
Oh.
That's where that came from.
Well, another lifted thing that you hear all the time, like King always puts in these type of traps, these different mazes. And I was kind of disappointed that when you go to the Stanley Hotel, they don't actually have a hedge maze, but they did build like kind of a miniature one out front just to kind of, I guess, pay respects.
Yeah, the maze is actually an interesting choice at the end of the movie, because in the book there's like a topiary, there's like hedge animals outside the hotel and they come to life. And I think Kubrick was like, well, fuck, man, it's it's the 80s. We're not making like animated hedge animals. So instead, yeah, thankfully they made the hedge maze. And what's interesting about it is the snow, which to me looked completely real. I had no idea. They used 90 tons of salt plus styrofoam to make that snow scene. And I think it was totally worth it, because those pursuit scenes between Jack and Danny are unforgettable and terrifically shot. The way that they use those trailing shots of Danny as he's running through the snow with that harsh lighting against the walls of the hedge maze was really gripping to watch and visually astounding.
But this was also one of the first big uses of the Steadicam, because they had just developed the technology. It used to be that you would mount the camera onto a little like dolly and then it would run on tracks. So if the camera's going to move, because it was so heavy. They figured out technology where you could move with it. It's not like today where the guys wear these small harnesses and they're stabilized. So at the time, people were amazed at these one takes where you're following the character through the maze. And again, like you said, Danny's smart. He backs his tracks, but still, it would have been real difficult to get out. And if I did get out, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going back in the hotel and I'm turning those fucking lights off. I'm not giving Jack a chance to find his way out. Kill the lights, movie's over. And it was a bit of an odd choice to make that abrupt cut.
Yeah.
To almost like a freeze frame of Jack frozen.
Yeah, but it gave us a meme that will last a lifetime. Like anytime anybody's talking about freezing, that's the meme.
Yeah. It is interesting. It just sort of ends with that, and you don't know really what happens. And I guess we're going to find out on November 8th when we go see Dr. Sleep together. Well, that brings us to the part of the podcast where we break out our Shat meters and give you our wipe scores. If you've never listened to the podcast before, 0 wipes is a perfect movie. 5 wipes is a terrible movie. We'll start with you, Gene. How many wipes do you give The Shining?
People often talk about the horrible score that we gave Blade Runner, and I feel like I'm going to catch a lot of shit for this one. I want to start out by saying this is a quality movie. Like, I'll never argue against that. It is beautifully shot. The sound is fantastic. The acting is terrific. But much like being stuck at the Overlook Hotel for an entire winter, it just dragged on, and I felt like it would never end. And then looking back at the 2 hours of film I just watched, I'm like, hardly anything happened in this movie. And like a lot of Kubrick's work, I had strong reactions to the imagery and the characters, but I never felt like I was being told a coherent story. Like, there are lesser movies with poorer production quality that at least tell a coherent story, that you get something out of it. And I think that's why King, didn't feel connected to this work, because he tells very complete stories, usually with some sort of morality play. And Kubrick is known for leaving things very ambiguous. And I think the most damning bit is that I was never scared while watching. You guys mentioned that there was a suspense or a fear or something like that. I felt nothing even remotely approaching anxiety or discomfort while watching this movie. The closest I came to it was just kind of a hatred for the misogyny and the character of Jack. But it was exciting. It was fun to watch. But if you told me pick a great horror movie, this isn't it. And if you told me to pick a great story, this isn't it either. So for me, this comes up to above average, but only 1.5 wipes.
Wow, that's interesting. I personally believe this is a masterpiece of horror films. It's exactly what makes me scared. We talked about it at great lengths. There's no jump scares, just an overall artistic creepiness. Kubrick is a mad genius who pushed the limits of actors in film. And in my opinion, even though this is an early 80s movie, it still holds up to the point to where I procrastinated. Typically, like, we've been on a Sunday morning schedule, but because of Watchmen, we kind of had to push it back to Wednesday when we're recording this. But like, I procrastinated Saturday until sundown. Now we're in winter, so it's getting a little darker early on. And I knew that we had to record possibly at 9 a.m., but I waited until daylight Sunday. I woke up at like 6 a.m. so that I wouldn't have to watch this movie at night and have possible night terrors. That's how affected I am from this movie. So I highly recommend The Shining to any fan of horror movies. Yes, it's not faithful to King's adaptation at all. Yes, King hates it, but I think it's one of the best movies we've ever reviewed here. It still holds up for me, and I don't say this very lightly. It's a solid 0 white movie for me. That leaves you, Big D.
So I want to first off, Gene, your biggest knock on this was you said the coherent story. And you said it's kind of ambiguous. You don't know what's going on. I think that's what Kubrick was getting at. Not every movie needs to have a clear unmasking at the end where Scooby and the guys in the van figure out it was old man Winters down at the windmill.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for your kids.
Yeah. This is supposed to be ambiguous. We don't know who to believe. We're seeing it from all these different characters who could be mentally ill, who could be an abused spouse, who could be a child with a special power, who could be an old man cook in Miami who's sensing this power. You don't know what it is. Yeah, the things don't make sense at the end. What would cause a 10,000 gallon bloodbath to come down the elevators? I don't know. What would cause the lobby to be filled with skeletons? That never happened at any point. Why would Jack be in a picture from 21 at the 4th of July party? But you don't know what's real. You just know the madness. And I think Kubrick drove the actors mad. It felt real, like I'm done. I'm trapped in this fucking hotel for a year. The shots are beautiful. They're memorable. Danny riding his big wheel, the maze. You felt the size of the hotel. Then you also felt how claustrophobic it was. Even though you're in this big space, you're trapped. You can't go anywhere. I think it is a perfect film. I think it is a 0. It's beautiful. The mundane things you said, like where he was going in for the interview. Those are normal everyday conversations that movies just cut out. But it added layers to Jack's performance. You see he's this fuck up who's damaged. And as you go on, you learn more and more about them, even though really nothing's happening. And I found the one rule I always go back to, if I'm in a movie and I'm looking at my watch to see how long it is, or I'm pausing to see how much time is left, I didn't do that once in this movie. I felt the 2 hours and 20 something minutes flew by. So for that, I got to give it a 0. Does it rank up there with the other zeros? That's a debate. But as far as this genre, I think this is a perfect, spooky, scary horror film. And it's, perfect for the Spooktacular Shat 3rd year anniversary.
So if we were to add up 0, 0, and 1.5 Gene and then divide by 3, that gives us our overall Shat score, which is for The Shining.
Well, Raj, I'm happy to report that my score didn't damage this movie's legacy too much, only bringing it down to an average of half a wipe for The Shining.
And if we were to compare that against those other top movies, like you said, Big D, in the pantheon of Shat, where does that put The Shining, or where does that rank The Shining?
So that ties it in the 10 spot with 3 very different films: Aliens, Edward Scissorhands, and The Princess Bride. It is slightly better than Die Hard, Groundhog Day, and Good Will Hunting, and it's a little bit worse than Fight Club, Big Lebowski, and The Cable Guy.
I mean, that feels right. I think this is better than The Cable Guy, but it's different.
I just love that The Cable Guy just keeps showing up in there. It's just like the biggest fuck you. It's the thing that everyone will always bring up, like, oh yeah, and you guys also loved The Cable Guy.
But you know what? I would much rather people give a shit for ranking The Cable Guy so high, because I'm tired of hearing the Blade Runner argument. I'm tired of hearing Wrath of Khan. There aren't that great movies, guys. They're not that great.
No, but you have to understand the passion of that audience.
No, I get it.
I don't know why they don't like Star Trek. This is the best movie I've ever seen.
Here's the thing: is if I sat down with any random stranger, sat them down on the couch, and put on The Cable Guy, I'm not looking over to them and see if they're having a good time. I don't need to look over to them. I know that it's going to be a good time. Yeah. If I put on Blade Runner, and I'm sitting there with my mom, yeah, that shit's not going well. She's going to be like, what the fuck is this? What's happening? Why are they eating so many noodles? What's that snake doing?
Does your mom need a nap? She need a good
she's rest? A good nap. Some droning synth. They're like, hey, Mom, check out Wrath of Khan.
Hey, I got to sneak this in. I was going to talk about it earlier. You're saying Blade Runner? You might see a little similarity between part of this movie. Do you know the intro in the opening scene where they're flying through and you're following the car driving through the hills? That is the exact scene that was added to the end of Blade Runner. When they first tested Blade Runner, it did poorly. So they went back and they added a Harrison Ford narration and they wanted a happy ending. So at the end, when you see Deckard driving away, that is actually the same B footage that Kubrick shot for this movie. So they do tie together, even though this one is significantly better than Blade Runner.
Wait a minute. What are you saying that Blade Runner didn't test well? Its first release?
Yeah.
So there were lots of people who also didn't like Blade Runner?
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that Raj didn't go on some giant rant about how they're in the same universe, you see.
That's right. Well, now's the time of the podcast where we give you our shout outs and tell you the next movie we're going to be doing. Gene, what's a shout out?
Raj, a shout out is our way of saying thank you for visiting our website, shatthemovies.com, where you can vote for your favorite movies for us to review. You can also see past episodes that we've done and find ways to support us and the podcast so we can keep making it for you. This week's shout outs go out to What Happened to Carrie Gross. And the email address is savecarrie@hotmail.com. The Bumph, Ivor Biggin from Somerset, England. Evil Ed, visit lemonparty.org. Don't. Do not. Just David from New York City. Pedro the White Guy. Save the OA. A Bologna Sandwich. Steve from Minnesota. Riley Bug Kraus. Dick Bob. Dan from Perth, the most isolated city on earth.
I like how these are the people that, could you imagine a gathering of Shat listeners?
Fabulous.
Yeah, ShatCon. It's going to happen. Derek, Anya Z. Warjawi, Sir Fabsalot, the best Katie in Ormond Beach.
Oh, Ormond Beach. Way to go, Katie.
Big Al PYT, Shooter McGavin, Ethan's Eyebrows, Al from Alberta, High in Kentucky, Virgo the Daddy, Pelswick Commander, and Danielle.
Nice.
Thanks, everybody, for sending in your shout-outs. What the hell has happened? I don't even know anymore. I'm glad it's at the end of the podcast, not the beginning. Again, if you'd like to hear your name on the podcast, just go to shatthemovies.com, put your name in the shout-out slider, and I guess I'll read it.
Yeah, or you could go, we just added a new call to action, shatthemovies.com/shout-out. So that'll take you right there also.
Oh, I'll take you right there.
Yeah, we don't want you to navigate the site and do other things. Just go straight to the shout-out and leave. Marketing, baby.
Yeah. So on the website, you can commission upcoming movies. And Big D, I think now that the Shat Spooktacular is over, we're back to our commissions, and that's the next movie that we're going to be doing, right?
We do, and this one is a birthday gift, so I don't want to say who commissioned it because the spouse might know, but this is a special birthday gift coming up next week. When Colonel Ted Masters' plane goes down in an Arab country and he's sentenced to death for trespassing, his 18-year-old son, Doug, is determined to save him. Unfortunately, Doug wasn't accepted to the Air Force because he needs to listen to music in order to hit his targets. So he enlists to help his colonel. What?
That's like me when I have to have sex.
Oh,
I can't hit the target
I
unless I listen to music in the background. I have very sensitive boners like Gene.
I'm just getting ready for the Arab country. Like, I know this movie's going to offend the shit out of me.
Is it Libya? Great. I hope it's Libya.
No, it's going to be like some Kazakhstan, some like made up country.
Something made up. Kazakhstan's a real place.
I said Kazakhstan. I said Kazakhstan. I made it up.
So it's an I instead of an E.
Yeah, so he enlists the help of Colonel Chappie to borrow a couple of F-16 fighters to fly across the Atlantic and start a rescue mission. This was
Is this really the plot?
Oh,
this
yes.
is really the plot of the movie?
I thought it was helicopters.
No, fuck no.
No, that's Airwolf.
No, can't you picture? Just listen, okay? He gets in the plane, he puts his headphones on, and he starts playing One Vision by Queen. One life, one. Oh, it is. It'll fire you up. This is almost as good as Kenny Loggins for Top Gun. This is some good shit. Yeah, it's wild, the plot.
Also, there's a Watchmen tie-in, so that's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's exciting. All right. Well, listen to the end of the podcast if you want to hear the trailer for that movie.
Yeah, and also I have a follow-up here. Last week we did a special shout-out from one of our young listeners in Belfast, Brody, So in that shout out, we said, Brody, call in. She's 10. Why not? So Brody was kind enough today to take her mom's cell phone and call us. So why don't we stop and listen to what Brody had to say?
I like how 10-year-olds are calling into the show.
Yeah, normally the police would be coming to our house right now.
So I can't wait to have a knock at my front door.
I hope she talks to us through her imaginary friend in her finger.
Hi, my name is Brady from Belfast. Thank you for the shout out. It was super exciting. You made me and my mom shat our brains out of our heads. Anyways, my favorite movie is The Nightmare Before Christmas. I like the graphics, the monsters, the animations, the songs and all. And Jack Skellington, do you think that it's a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie? I'm very curious. Anyways, Roger, I know the Jaws ride that you're talking about. I've seen it on YouTube loads of times and I love it and I'm very jealous I didn't get to go to it. Thank you again. My mom loves you guys. Bye.
Oh, that was great. That was super cool.
I just like that she said, my mom loves you guys.
I like how kids are using YouTube to go and explore like past amusement rides. Listen, Jaws was fun when it was in use, but it wasn't like the greatest ride.
I think I'm going to do for Brody? I think I'm going to give you a special gift here. Our Christmas movie is not picked yet. I think why don't we add that into the voting block?
Yeah,
so
I'm down with that.
So Brody, we are adding a movie into our Christmas block specifically for you.
Also, if you go to shatthemovies.com and vote on the Christmas block and don't choose The Nightmare Before Christmas, you're crushing an Irish child's dreams. So just have that on your conscience. Also, Brody, it's a Halloween movie.
Is it really a Halloween movie? I thought it was a Christmas movie.
The director of the film has definitively said she considers it a Halloween movie, but we're going to do it for Christmas with your votes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us everywhere on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow the handle at Shat the Movies. We're also on Facebook if you're still using that, which I implore you not to. Just search for Shat the Movies. Our website where you can vote on upcoming movies and see our affiliate links is shatthemovies.com. Our email address where you can email us upcoming movie categories and suggestions is hosts@shatthemovies.com. You can support the podcast through our different links. If you want to commission a movie, just go to our website and you can find the link there. You can also complete a survey to help us find wonderful advertisers to keep the lights on here at shatthemovies.com so I don't go insane and start seeing ghosts. We're everywhere. Fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. It really does help the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and now Watchmen. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. If you're, we're having such a good time over there. It's unbelievable. You can check out and subscribe at shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene Red Rum Lyons, I'm Roger Roeper. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie review. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Good night and good luck.
Doug Masters. He's 18 years old. Raised on an airbase.
Are you out of your mind?
Born to fly. Living for the day he'll earn his wings. Suddenly, just when life was going great.
Doug, it's your dad. He's been shot down. Hey, buddy.
Davis, hey, it's okay.
Colonel, will you please just tell me what's going on?
Your country has been warned time and time again.
Because they claim a 200-mile limit. We only recognize 12. So when are they going in?
Reparation is our due.
Don't lie to me.
3 days. In 3 days, they're going to hang him.
When the Pentagon is helpless.
We're doing all we can.
And Washington's hands are tied.
We make the laws in this country.
There's only one thing to do. And he'll do it with one of the toughest fighter pilots who ever lived, retired Colonel Chappie Sinclair.
You know, your dad understands a lot about people's dignity. That's the last kind of person in the world I want to see locked up in some stinking cage somewhere.
Do you think with the right plan, it'd be simple to go in and get him?
Probably.
What's going on?
Look, I'm telling you right now, I bet you can get a plane.
Bingo, we're in.
Are you wide enough to get me a couple of pilots, too?
I've got 3 times as many hours on that simulator as most pilots flying Falcons on this base right now.
I'll test you out on some live targets.
He may know how to fly. Now he must learn how to fight.
Want you concentrate.
Yeah! All right, we're going!
Everyone told them to sit tight and wait.
Heat up from here on out.
For them, waiting time is over.
Okay?
Hey! They're going in against the clock. In a pair of borrowed F-16s.
One mission, one heart, one soul.
Jeffy, I hit it. Now just worry about the pre-makes that got up. Climb! Climb!
Academy Award winner Louis Gossett Jr., Jason Gedrick, Iron Eagle.